Hi everyone, here's another quarantine kitchen video. Today I'm going to work on a basic chicken stock. So this is something that's going to be quick and easy and something to do with your leftover chicken bones. Today I'm going to kind of go through the version of stock I'm going to be making. There's lots of versions of stock. This is going to be kind of a brown chicken stock using a little bit of red wine, some basic mirepoix, and some basic herbs. Today I'm going to start by breaking down a chicken just as a quick refresher, but if you would like to see that in more detail, go watch my last video. Today, some of the things you can do with chicken stock are kind of using it to bulk up a sauce or really anything that you might use store-bought chicken broth for. With the amount of bones that most people have in their home, you can only make kind of a quicker stock and not something that's going to be quite as thick and unctuous like a demi-glace that you might see in a professional kitchen. The reason that we're going to not make nearly as much or not sort of reduce it to that level is because what you would end up with so few chicken carcasses is maybe 1 or 2 tablespoons of chicken jus, and that just wouldn't get you anywhere. So we're going to make a less potent but easily distributable chicken stock and something that can be used in a lot of different recipes. So first things first, start by breaking down the chicken. Again, if you'd like to see a more thorough version of breaking down a chicken, go ahead and watch my last video. So I'll just go through this quickly and kind of re-talk about the parts that I'm doing. So again, we're just gonna get rid of these wings. I like to use the wings in the stock because they're full of gelatin and kind of give a lot more flavor and thickness into a stock. Again, we're cutting along the breast. Then we go through next to the carcass and pop our joint out of the bone, or the bone out of the joint, and then along, and we have our half chicken. I'm going to be saving this like this and potentially using this half of the chicken for a whole nother recipe. And then we're just repeating on the other side. Again, right between the joint and the carcass, along the rib cage, and then along the membrane, popping that out, using the side of our knife to sort of push the carcass away. That way we can get in between and slice right through. And there we go, another half of the chicken. Next, just to show you guys, we have our chicken carcass from yesterday. I have here all the wings, the wing tips, one of the drumettes, and the carcass, and just from the last video, a little bit of a thigh bone. All this will be great in the chicken stock and will help to make it flavorful and thick. So the next thing we're gonna do is bring out our vegetables. Just right here, for this amount of carcass or chicken bones, we're just gonna use 1 onion. Really, you don't need to use much more than that. This is a chicken stock, not necessarily a vegetable stock. We just want some of this good flavor in there, but we don't need it to be the predominant flavor. I'm just gonna sort of rough chop this. It doesn't need to be anything fancy, just small enough to sort of break it down, and that way it fits easily into your pot. Next, we've got just a single stalk of celery. Again, we don't need very much. General rules for stocks and for what's called mirepoix, which these vegetables are a basic mirepoix, is 2 onion, 1 celery, 1 carrot. So we're just gonna break them down. Again, they don't have to be any particular size. They don't have to be too close to the same size. We just want them small and good for stirring. I also have a little bit of rosemary, some sage, and some dried bay leaves. All these are going to be good and add just a little bit of flavor that's going to make our end result that much better. All right, now that we have our chicken bones, we're gonna put them in a 450-degree oven to roast for about 20 minutes. We just don't want to develop some color and caramelization on here, just so we get that deep caramelized flavor of roasted chicken bones. In the meantime, we're gonna add our mirepoix into a stock pot that's on a burner at about medium-high heat. When we do this, we don't want any oil or salt in there. We just want to sweat them a little bit, get them a little bit of color on them. That way we develop some of that nice roasted vegetable flavor. All right, our vegetables have started to develop some color. It's been about 5 minutes. We have a little bit of color on the bottom of the pot, and our vegetables are starting to become a little bit translucent. So our next step is just take a little bit of red wine, just using sort of whatever you get at the store. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just a nice cheap bottle of wine. We're just gonna cover the bottom of the pan so that it can lift up some of that nice brown flavor, and then we're gonna reduce some of this red wine. All right, so it's been another 2 or 3 minutes and almost all our red wine is reduced, and it has started to pull up some of the brown flavor off of the bottom of the pan. At this point, just while we're waiting for the rest of the bones to roast, we're gonna turn off our stove, and if you have an electric stove like me, take it off of the heating element. All right, it's been about 30 minutes. After the initial 20 minutes, I checked my bones and decided I wanted some more time. This is something you're gonna have to do based on how hot your oven gets. So now that they've roasted a little bit, they have a little bit of color, and on the pan they have a lot of color. And so this is about as far as we wanna take them so that they don't turn burnt and kind of lend that burnt flavor to our stock. Here I'm just gonna pull everything off, put it right in the pot. And then as soon as we get all of this into our pot, we're gonna add a little bit of red wine, the glazing a little bit, similar to how we did with the vegetables. As you can see, it doesn't sizzle quite as much, but it's gonna really help pull some of this stuff off. We just wanna scrape all this and try and get all these tasty bits right into our stock pot. So, pour that right in, being careful because this pan is definitely still hot. Now that we're done with that pan, we're going to bring this back onto our heating element, add our herbs, again that's rosemary, sage, and bay leaves, and then I'm gonna add about 4 quarts of cold water. It's important to add cold water because of the albumin in both the chicken bones and the vegetables. Albumin is a protein that helps keep your stock clear as you're cooking it. So turn our heating element onto high so that we can bring it to a boil. As soon as it comes to a boil, we'll turn it down and let it just barely simmer for about 2.5 hours. Our stock has now come to a boil, and we just want to make sure from here to turn it down to a simmer and let it go for another 2 to 3 hours. It's important not to have it boiling too high, otherwise you're going to cause a lot of the scum in the bones to come out and really make your stock look dirty. We're back about 3 hours later with our chicken stock. It's been simmering along at this nice low simmer. We're gonna turn it off. I let it go for about 3 hours instead of the 2 that I said earlier. I just wanted to reduce it more, get a little bit more flavor. The longer you reduce this, the more potent your stock is gonna be. So, when you taste the stock at this point, it's gonna maybe not have as much flavor as you think it should. A big part of that is we have not added any salt to it yet. The second you start adding salt and acid, you're really gonna get that chicken flavor. And the reason we don't add salt right now is because then when you put it into a dish later, you can really control the levels of salt. That way you're not reducing it too much later when you cook and having a dish that comes out way too salty. So using chicken stock in a dish in place of water or veg stock is also gonna give you a lot deeper, more sort of unctuous flavor and mouthfeel. All right, our chicken stock is ready to go, and so we're gonna take these bones out carefully. They're gonna be really tender and really want to fall apart, but they're a little bit too big for our colander and strainer over here. Gonna pull those guys out, being careful. This is, again, very hot, even though it's been just simmering. What you really want to watch out for is the steam. The steam is what's really going to burn you here. Once we kind of get all these chicken bones out, really I'm just going to aim for the big carcasses, and because I don't really want to go rooting around for the rest of the bones. Slowly pour it right into our bowl. I like to make sure not to do this above the sink because more often than not, people will accidentally pour their stock right down the drain. And that would be a terrible, terrible loss. Dump that out, and now that we have a little bit more room in there, kind of get the rest of that out of there. Here, we can dump this out of here. And really kind of shake all that out, make sure we're getting all that excess little stock. I've now moved our chicken stock into a Tupperware container. This is just a great way to store it. I'm gonna let it cool out at room temperature. And then as soon as it's cool, I will freeze it. Freezing it's a great way to keep it. Just that way you can use it whenever you need. It's always on hand. Stick around, watch some other videos, and I'll show you a couple ways to use chicken stock.